There have been some pieces in the press about, maybe there's some dissent in the regime and maybe we're seeing the regime starting to crack up. And I think, again, that hope and that wish is a little bit misplaced. Let's go ahead and put this next piece up on the screen. So we did have the highest level defection so far from the Kremlin. This is Russian climate envoy Anatoly Chubai, I don't know exactly how to say his name, has stepped down and left the country, citing his opposition to war in Ukraine, becoming the highest level official to break with the Kremlin over the invasion. And Saagar, I was talking to our friend Igor, who we had on the show on Tuesday. You guys should all watch that interview. By the way, he is a Russian living in Moscow and has he's anti-war and has a wonderful perspective on all of this. And he said that Chubai is very significant symbolically because he was literally the father of those 1990s era reforms. In a lot of ways, he was the architect of the sort of oligarchic regime. So he was central to creating this economic system that they have that ultimately not only creates the oligarchs, but brings Putin to power. He was at one time, as Matt Taibbi pointed out to us, was sort of celebrated by these type of individuals. And so within the Kremlin for a long time, you had a split between the security state FSB types and the sort of liberal column. And this individual who just defected was part of that liberal column. In reality, those quote-unquote liberals have been irrelevant for a long time. He's more of a symbolic figure. And so when you see people like this leaving and defecting, on the one hand, okay, you could say, it's signs of cracks. On the other, they were already irrelevant, and you're also pushing out of the regime any of the voices that might have potentially been a voice of moderation. So it's not necessarily an unequivocally good thing that he is leaving. However, you have some other signs of dissent. Let's put this up there on the screen from the New York Times. Some signs they're trying to read into that perhaps some of the military leadership is unhappy with how this has all gone. They say that Igor Girkin, a former colonel in Russia's FSB intelligence agency and the former defense minister of Russian-backed separatists in eastern Ukraine, said in a video interview posted online on Monday that Russia had made a, quote, catastrophically incorrect assessment of Ukraine's forces. He said, quote, the enemy was underestimated in every aspect. You have another retired lieutenant colonel and Russian state television commentator who said of Ukraine's forces that there was probably the hope that they wouldn't resist so intensely. Well, we're delusional on that one. They were expected to be more, quote, reasonable. And there are some experts quoted here who believe that the failures in Ukraine have, quote, started to create fissures within Russian leadership. Top Russian intelligence official in charge of overseeing the recruitment of spies and diversionary operations in Ukraine has been put under house arrest along with his deputy. So there are some signs that, the fact that this militarily has been a complete disaster and hasn't gone the way that Russia thought it would is creating some schisms and some fractions within Russian military leadership. But again, number one, I'd be very skeptical of these reports. And number two, ultimately, does that mean that they're, planning to overthrow the regime and put someone else in charge? I think that's unlikely because all of these people depend for their position and for the oligarchs for their money on Vladimir Putin being in power.
I'm really glad that you put it that way because for all of the talk of and also I'm annoyed with Igor because I was going to make the same point about Chubai in terms of what he meant to the regime. So thanks for stealing my thunder there, Igor. But I guess he's actually Russian, so it's fine. But whenever it comes to the analysis about what's going on within the military, the West, obviously, we're trying to grab onto any item of hope about problems with morale or, Putin firing his generals. I think he fired 8 of his generals reportedly. But at the same time, and I read this with great interest, and it came out a report last night, and it wasn't well noticed, but there was a leaked diplomatic cable of 2 military attaches at the U.S. Embassy who met with their Russian counterpart for the first time since the war began. And they said that he had a, quote, emotional outburst at them, Krystal, that he basically accused them and Ukraine of trying to murder his family because his family apparently lives or was of Ukrainian descent and lives in Donetsk, which is one of those breakaway republics, and stormed out of the meeting in an emotional outburst. So for every talk of a general who is, skeptical or upset with the leadership, this guy clearly, they said that this was an enormous departure from diplomatic protocol for the Russian military attaché to just storm out of a meeting with the U.S. embassy attaché. These things are scripted and they're very boring normally because we're two nuclear powers and these kind of things should be kept down. And, we're about to talk about some of the departures from that. But that report, the U.S. embassy was trying to spin it as showing that there's really bad morale within the Russian military. I saw it as, hey, this guy's willing to blow up a meeting with us over Donetsk, and you have somebody in the military so fanatically committed to this mission, it seems that he is supporting it 100%. So we should also remember that Putin probably has a large amount of support within the military. Also, the Russian conscripts and many of these people, they have no idea what's going on. As we've seen from some of the videos that have come out, they don't care necessarily one way or the other. They might be against it. And as Igor said on our show, it doesn't matter what the people think. He's like, we live in a totalitarian autocracy.
Right.
It's like, yes, people would be happy if the war ended, but what we think only really matters, if things are 100% on the breaking point.
Yeah.
And we don't see that happening yet. So that was my warning again to people who think that an immense amount of dissent or whatever is coming. One guy, Anatoly Chubai, who's a liberal, who's already connected to the Yeltsin regime and has kind of been allowed to stay around for a while as a sign of goodwill because he's willing to play ball with Putin. Him leaving, that's just not a lot in terms of what we need to see.
That's exactly right. And I think the last thing I'll say here is it seems like there's kind of two potential scenarios playing out in terms of the administration's thinking. I don't doubt that there are people in the administration who do have in mind, the only end game is for Putin's regime to end. And again, I think that is incredibly foolish. Not that he's been a good leader, not that he isn't actually, guilty of the crimes that he's been accused of, because he is all of that. I just don't think that we're anywhere close to the end of the Putin regime. And then the other possibility is that there is no grand strategy and everything is just sort of reacting to events as they unfold. And I don't know which one of those is the case and is sort of driving the ship. Both of them, though, are really quite troubling.
Hey guys, we're going to be totally upfront with you. This is the most perilous time that we have ever operated in.
It is so difficult just to try to sort through the news, but even more importantly, to bring you accurate information as this wave of lockdown and censorship spreads across the nation.
Yeah, look, if you can become a premium subscriber today at breakingpoints.com, you're going to help us build out a vibrant, independent media ecosystem which is free of mainstream pressure. We can't tell you how important that is at a time like this.
Yep, that's right. Go to breakingpoints.com to subscribe. We love you guys and we appreciate you so much.